Valentino Rossi. Long before the world called him the Doctor, Valentino Rossi was simply a punk kid with a helmet full of ideas. At Jerez in 1999, fresh off a 250cc victory, Rossi did something no one had ever imagined. Instead of the usual wheelie or flag wave, he pulled to the side of the track, jumped off the bike, sprinted to a portable toilet his friends had hidden behind the barriers, and slammed the door. For 10 seconds, the crowd went silent. Then the door creaked open. Rossi walked out, pretending to zip up his leathers, arms raised like a comedian timing his punchline. The grandstands exploded. It was chaos, laughter, disbelief. MotoGP had never seen a celebration like it. But in the race direction room, the faces were not smiling. Rossi had stopped on the racing line, abandoned his bike, and run across an active track. FM officials fined him for unsafe conduct after finish, warning that any similar stunts would draw penalties. That's how a new clause was born: no stopping on track or use of external props during post-race celebrations. The next year at Donington, he did it again. Different joke, same energy. And the rule was tightened further. Yet ironically, those bans built his legend. Fans realized Rossi wasn't just a rider. He was an entertainer trapped inside a regulation book. Even decades later, riders still talk about that moment. The day a portable toilet changed MotoGP's culture. It was reckless, yes, but pure. And it forced the sport to decide how much personality it could handle before it had to call a meeting. Casey Stoner. Phillip Island 2007 wasn't just another home win for Casey Stoner. It was a national event. The young Aussie had already secured his first world title, the entire grandstand roaring with every corner. When he crossed the finish line, he reached out for the ritual every champion dreamed of, grabbing the Australian flag from a marshal to begin his victory lap. But that tiny gesture almost turned catastrophic. As he leaned over to take the flag, the marshal stepped a fraction too close. Stoner's clutch hand shifted, his Honda twitched at 140 kilometers per hour, and the fabric snapped against his brake lever. For one horrifying second, the flag tangled with the rear brake line. The bike jolted, and Casey nearly lost control in front of tens of thousands. He saved it, barely. But that clip went viral across every broadcaster that weekend. It looked heroic to the crowd, but in the paddock offices, it looked like a lawsuit waiting to happen. The following winter, Dorna and Fim rewrote a line in the sporting code: no on-track interaction with marshals or props after race finish, no flag handoffs, no object passing, no touching the wall. The celebration that had defined decades, Doohan waving the Southern Cross, Rossi with the Italian tricolore, was over. From 2008 onwards, riders could only collect flags inside Parc Fermé. Stoner didn't intend to cause a ban. He just wanted to celebrate home. But that moment froze into MotoGP history. A single frame where passion collided with protocol. It ended a tradition, yet started something deeper. The realization that even joy in MotoGP travels at 300 kilometers per hour. And safety never blinks. Valentino Rossi. When Valentino Rossi moved up to the 500cc class, MotoGP turned into a theater. Every win became an episode. Every celebration, a story. But between 2001 and 2002, his imagination went so far off script that race direction literally had to rewrite television rules. At Mugello 2001, after a breathtaking home victory, Rossi parked his bike, ran to the barriers, and was met by friends dressed as policemen. They mock arrested him for speeding on the circuit, complete with fake handcuffs, pretend sirens, and a crowd losing its collective mind. He laughed, hugged them, waved to the grandstands, and Dorna officials sat stone-faced in the control room. The following year, at the same track, he topped it. After winning again, he rolled down pit lane with an inflatable doll strapped behind him, helmet tucked under its chin. Pretending to ride two up with a supermodel, the crowd howled. Italian TV replayed it all night, but corporate sponsors didn't. They called it indecent, unprofessional, and unbroadcastable in conservative markets. Within days, the FM issued a bulletin citing unsporting conduct and use of inappropriate props. And from 2003 onward, the rulebook gained a brand new paragraph. Riders may not display costumes, props, or signage liable to cause offense or confusion during post-race celebrations. Rossi wasn't fined heavily. The sport still needed him, but the rule stuck. His humor was the reason fans tuned in. Yet his mischief became the reason MotoGP's image department started policing emotion. It was a strange paradox. The man who made racing joyful forced the sport to sanitize it. And that's how Valentino Rossi, the rider who made millions laugh, became the reason MotoGP outlawed laughter with props. Marquez. If Rossi made celebrations theatrical, Marquez made them cinematic. When he burst into MotoGP in 2013, his energy was nuclear, and his post-race style matched it. After every win, he'd launch into a massive burnout, painting the asphalt black with Michelin smoke, then yank the front brake and pop a stoppy size. So violent the back wheel lifted a full meter, fans screamed. Engineers cringed. By Austin 2014, the burnout smoke was so thick it triggered track sensors. Cameras caught mechanics waving frantically, worried the clutch temperature was exceeding the limit. Then came Jerez 2016. Marquez locked the rear wheel mid-stoppy, almost flipping the RC213V as it skidded sideways toward the wall. That's when HRC engineers and Dorna quietly intervened. A memo went out to all teams. Intentional wheel locking, stoppies, or extended burnouts after race completion are prohibited. The reasoning sounded technical: tire safety, engine longevity, surface damage. But everyone knew it was about optics. MotoGP couldn't afford its poster boy crashing after the checkered flag. Marquez adapted. The next race, he still celebrated, but cleaner. Controlled wheelie, crisp wave, big smile. And just like that, an era ended. That invisible rule change rippled through the grid. Today, riders finish like machines. Quick handshake, return to pit lane. Everything choreographed. Because once upon a time, one young Spaniard turned victory laps into stunt reels, and the sport realized even happiness had a speed limit. Espargaro. For more than a decade, Aprilia had been the forgotten factory. Always trying, always suffering, never quite there. And then came Termas de Rio Hondo, 2022, a race that rewrote Alex Espargaro's life and changed MotoGP's emotional ceiling forever. He had spent 200-plus Grand Prix chasing a single dream: a win. The factory had chased one, too. When he took the checkered flag in Argentina, it wasn't a victory. It was an eruption. He parked the RSGP on the main straight, ripped off his gloves, and stood on the pegs screaming into the sky. Then came the moment that froze on every broadcast. Alex flung his helmet into the air with every ounce of disbelief in his body. The crowd roared. Mechanics cried. His brother Paul was sobbing on pit wall, but race direction was already scrolling the rulebook. According to FIM Article 1.2.1.6, riders must remain in control of their motorcycles and retain safety equipment within the circuit perimeter at all times. When that helmet left Alex's hands, so did his compliance. The officials saw a flying 1.6 kilogram carbon projectile that could have hit a marshal, a camera, or landed on hot tarmac mid-lap for backmarkers. Hours later, the paperwork arrived. €1,000 fine and a formal warning for abandoning protective equipment in a live circuit area. It didn't matter that it was beautiful. It mattered that it was dangerous. In post-race interviews, Alex didn't apologize. He just said, voice cracking, "I waited my whole career for this. If they find me, I'll pay twice." And he meant it. That celebration became a paradox. Punished, yet immortal. Aprilia got its first win. Alex got his redemption. And MotoGP got a reminder. Emotion doesn't always fit inside regulation. Paul Espargaro, his rise with KTM was never about elegance. It was about proving everyone wrong. By 2019, he'd dragged the orange RC16 from backmarker to podium fighter through sheer stubbornness. So when he finally stood on the rostrum at Misano 2019, he wanted the world to see that KTM belonged. Instead of returning quietly to Parc Fermé, Paul stopped at pit exit, right in front of KTM's garage, revved the RC16 to the limiter, dumped the clutch, and filled the lane with a wall of white tire smoke. Mechanics cheered, TV cameras panned, race direction panicked. Pit exit is classified as a live operational area. Marshals, cameramen, and engineers stand barely meters from the line. The moment that burnout started, visibility vanished. One photographer stumbled backward into another bike. The smoke cleared, and so did Dorna's patience. The next morning, an email hit every team inbox. Burnouts, donuts, or prolonged throttle activity inside pit lane or pit exit are prohibited under all conditions. The reason was dry and corporate, fire hazard, personnel safety, and broadcast obstruction. But everyone in the paddock knew the real line between the words. Paul went too far. A year later, when he repeated a shorter burnout after KTM's first dry race win, officials didn't fine him. They just cut the feed. The cameras turned away mid-smoke. Celebration censored in real time. Paul laughed about it afterward. "I guess we're too loud," he said. But the ban stayed. To this day, riders can't perform extended burnouts anywhere near pit lane, only in Parc Fermé under martial supervision. It's ironic. The act meant to announce KTM's arrival became the rule that silenced its echo. And yet, that moment, the smell of burning rubber, orange smoke, and a factory's pride will forever mark the instant MotoGP remembered that rebellion still lives beneath the regulations. Jack Miller. He was never built for polished podiums. He was the paddock's working-class outlaw, the farm kid from Townsville, who spoke like the throttle he twisted. All in, no filter, and his celebrations, pure chaos and leather. The shoey became his calling card. After every win, he'd pull off his boot, pour champagne into it, and drink it. A ridiculous Australian tradition he'd inherited from Formula One's Daniel Ricciardo. The crowd adored it, the cameras loved it, and sponsors tolerated it. But in 2021 and 2022, Miller's fun crossed a line MotoGP didn't know it had. At Le Mans 2021, after a wet-dry thriller, he grabbed a prop fishing rod from a mechanic, cast an imaginary line toward the grandstand, and reeled in the cheers before raising his boot for the shoey. It was hilarious, perfectly timed, and completely unscripted. Then, the email started. Dorna's health and sponsorship officials labeled the act unsanitary, unapproved, and inconsistent with commercial broadcast standards. The fishing rod prop, harmless as it was, technically broke the no external objects on podium clause introduced years earlier because of Rossi's inflatable doll stunt. And the shoey? That one triggered a new conversation entirely. Sponsors argued that showing riders drinking sweat-filled champagne from racing boots looked unhygienic on global broadcasts. FIAM's safety board quietly added a subclause under podium conduct: no ingestion of liquids from non-approved containers or personal garments. In other words, no more shoeys, unless someone pretends not to see it. Jack laughed it off, as he always did. If they ban it, I'll just do it off camera, he told reporters. And, true to his word, he kept sneaking them in. Low-key, behind the photographers, quick sip, wink at the crowd. The fishing rod never returned, but the legend stayed. That brief, rebellious minute at Le Mans became a fan-favorite meme, a reminder that MotoGP still had riders who didn't care about sponsorship gloss. Miller didn't mean to provoke anyone. He just celebrated like the sport still belonged to the riders, not the rule book.